Today I'm going to be covering top 5 tips for aspiring filmmakers, especially if you're a young boy in school or girl. If you're a young person in school, hey you, no, don't make a top 5 video. That's when you know that you've sold out and you're just trying to get views on YouTube. The thing is that I need to get 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 watch hours. Technically speaking, to get any money off of that How to Cry video, which I made, that got 20,000 views, which I made $20 off of. So to get that money, I need to get that many subs, so I need to get more views, you know. Okay, I guess I get it. I mean, you do release some really quality, really awesome short films on the internet for free that often don't get monetized or really get a lot of views. I would probably like, comment, subscribe, and share this with every filmmaker I know. Yeah, okay. So, tip number 1, make a short film. So, this is kind of an obvious number 1 tip, but in my opinion, it is the best way to start filmmaking. Just jump in and make a film.
Action. Clap as I'm going. Wait, I'm not. Clap whenever Avi says audio rolling. No, why?
First, you're going to want to write a script. You're going to want to keep in mind that usually it should have a beginning, middle, and an end. Also, you want to make sure it has conflict, because conflict will drive your story. You can choose any conflict under the sun. If it's a romance, obviously that conflict will probably be something romantic, perhaps an argument. If it's an action film, the conflict probably is going to have to do with some sort of object that someone needs to get, or some sort of place where someone needs to get into, or someone that they need to save. If it's a drama, it might be something more abstract. But really, you can throw anything at your film, any conflict, but you have to make sure that the conflict has stakes that match your story. And what I mean by that is, if you make a action film, for the audience to care, it has to have a reasonable amount of stakes. If the characters fail, something has to happen. And that thing that happens can either be small or big, but you have to somehow make the audience care for it, no matter what it is. So in a lot of high-budget Avengers movies, usually the stakes are the world will end. But you can also make great film with lower stakes, such as the recent film Logan, which is a great superhero movie. Turns out not about the end of the world, just about kind of a dystopian society, and the stakes were that there are all these kids and Logan wanted to save them, especially that little girl. Those were the stakes. You didn't want that little girl to turn out bad, and you wanted Wolverine to succeed in his journey. The second tip is don't worry about your camera, okay? I know I sound like a bit of a hypocrite because I recently purchased a used Blackmagic cinema camera, but technically speaking, I've done this for over half a decade. And by the way, it doesn't matter how long you've really been doing it, it doesn't really matter. For pretty much all of that time, I've used this trusty little Canon EOS Rebel T3i. Many of you have probably heard of it. It is an extremely versatile, great beginner's camera, and I probably used this camera for 3 to 4 years before switching over to this camera. So I've earned my right to have a new camera. But this is for all you aspiring filmmakers, all of you who haven't made a film yet. Don't worry about your camera. The best camera that you have is the camera that's closest to you that you can use to tell a story. If anything, sound is more important. Obviously, I'm not putting a whole lot of effort into sound, but that's just because I'm trying to make more content for you guys, and that's going to mean lowering the quality a little bit, but I still love you. And also, if you want something to look better and you don't necessarily want to invest in buying a new camera, always look into lighting. You can just invest $100 in lighting, buying can lights, wax paper, shower curtains, stands, and you can make a pretty decent lighting set, and you can do a lot with it if you practice. And I've made some videos about lighting and stuff like that on a low budget which you can check out there. Some general technical rules which I have written down here. Don't cross the 180. Learn the rule of thirds. Learn 3-point lighting. Always use a fluid head tripod, and if you can't afford one, use a rubber band. Video there for how to do that. Always get room tone. If you don't know what room tone is, look it up. If you want good sound, don't worry about the mic. Just whatever you have, get it as close to whatever sound you want to get as possible. So if I'm talking and I want a really, really good sound, it's probably peaking right now, but if you get it really close, you get better audio. Obviously that wasn't better because you need to adjust the levels, and again, if you want to know how to adjust the levels well, look it up on the internet. You'll get an in-depth guide on how to do that. Save as often as possible in your editing software. There's nothing worse than losing hours of work to a computer crash or something like that. Most importantly, don't use the "we'll fix it in post" excuse. And what I mean by that is if you're on set and something happens and you're like, oh, I'll just cover that up in post, it's always better to get a second take. That is unless you already have something planned to do in post. So if you have a shot and you're like, okay, this would be easier and more time effective if we did this in post instead, and I'm gonna plan on how to do this before we go on set, I think in that case, you can say we'll fix it in post because you already have a plan for it. But if something happens, it's always better to get a second take than to just save all the work for your editor or yourself, most likely, who will be editing the project. Tip number 3, be an extrovert.
Rolling.
Take 4, Mark.
All right.
So I know not a lot of filmmakers are extroverts, and that's fine, but you kind of need to learn how to fake it. Because if you want your film to look more professional, if you want your film to have higher production value, you need to ask people for things. A big popular one is locations, or wherever you want to film. Whatever location you write into your story, you're going to want to ask those people if you can film there. You should. You don't always have to though, but you know, you should. But anyways, equipment, you can get a lot of free equipment by just talking to people, getting to know people who in your school or your community that might have access to sound or video equipment. Definitely get to know them, get their connection, be nice to them so that eventually you can borrow their equipment. Cast, especially crew, you're gonna need to, you know, get yourself out there. You're gonna need to tell any actors around you that you're interested in casting them in your film. And this can be hard, but it is worth it. And if you're passionate enough about your film, it doesn't matter if you're an introvert, it doesn't matter if you're awkward, because you will be able to overcome that to make your film the best that it can be. So just keep that in mind. If you're truly trying to make the best film, you're gonna have to go out of your comfort zone. Step number 4, be resourceful, okay? This is a big one, especially if you're in school, in high school, college, middle school, elementary school, preschool. I don't know how many preschoolers are watching this, but because most likely, even if you're in a middle school or hell, a preschool, there will be a theater department, some sort of plays going on, a music department, most likely a media department. And you can go to all of these departments, you can go to the heads, you can go to the teachers of those departments and just go up to them, email them, whatever you need to do, and get what you need. So if you need actors, go to the theater department. If you need a soundtrack, try the music department. I'm sure there's plenty of kids who would love to compose music for your film. And then make sure also to go to your media department for any equipment that you might need. And you never know, even though the guys running the media crew might seem a bit intimidating, usually if you just approach them and tell them about your project and you're passionate enough about it, people will listen to you and people will help you. Step number 5, dropping the script. Forget about everything I just said and just make a movie. You might be wondering, well, why did you just explain 4 tips about filmmaking if you're just telling me to scrap all of them and not do them and just make movies? And my answer is because all those 4 tips I just said, every tip you'll ever learn about filmmaking will be second to you finding your voice. The one thing you can teach in filmmaking is how to find your own voice. That's the most important thing in filmmaking. That will distinguish you from everybody else who's making movies. Your voice is the blood that runs through your films. Think of the best directors, think of the best filmmakers. They all have a very distinct voice. Quentin Tarantino, Danny Boyle, Shane Carruth. Not many of you know about him, but he has a strong voice. Films that will knock people off their feet aren't good because someone learned how to get really good sound or someone learned how to light really well. They knock people off their feet because they're special, unique, and they tell an interesting, fascinating story. And for me, the best way to learn how to find your own distinct vision is to just make movies blindly without knowing any technical information and just telling stories with the camera. And I didn't follow this advice. Almost no one follows this advice, but I promise you if you do, you're going to be a better filmmaker than every other person who learns all the technical stuff before going into trying to make a good film. Your first films will be bad. Your third films will be bad. Your first 10 films will be bad. Your first 20 films will be bad. But eventually, you're gonna find your voice. But you'll never find your voice if you stay on YouTube watching tutorials on how to light scenes and how to write good dialogue. All this might seem cliche, but really, it's true. Your story is the heart of your film, and it's the most important thing. And the best way to learn how to tell a story with a camera is to just make movies, man. You just gotta make some films, dude. Or woman. I mean, God, what? Anyways, check my portfolio down there to see all my work. See that I'm not just some random guy spewing, hey, you should do this, but I have never made a film, and but you should listen to me. No, I actually have made films that I'm pretty proud of, that I think are good. I'm qualified. Subscribe, please. Like, share this with everybody, and go make a movie, man.